Welcome to this new Flight Simulator update movie. It's their Aircraft and Avionics update number 2, which bumps up Flight Simulator version to 1.33.8.0. Those who looked at, I would say, my beta reviews, right, where we looked at all the, I would say, fixes, probably know what's already being fixed. So if you saw those videos, you likely want to skip this one. But for those who are not following those videos, I will go quickly to what has been fixed. First of all, they are, I would say, kind of referring you to, if you experience any of the issues right after this update, then make sure that your package or your community folder is empty and you will only use the default content to see if you can reproduce the issue. That's what all software vendors do, right? So please follow these, I would say, recommendations if you're hitting any, I would say, unexpected behavior or unexpected performance. Now, what has been fixed? Well, a lot. Right, if we go to the general bug fixes, there's the autopilot and flight director, the heading mode. Now only reverses turn direction if the selected heading is turned past the aircraft's current heading in the direction of the turn reversal, right? That's for the NXI, the G2000, the GNS and the WT21, right? So they fixed it in multiple aircrafts. The next one is also the turn anticipation calculation around the AF and RF legs, whose start and end points are slightly offset from the arc. That's also being fixed, as well as they fixed an issue where the back course localizers are not being flown correctly. Last one is they fixed some error boxes where they changed the notifications to make them less intrusive, right? I would say previously you sometimes got some warnings and then you were really thinking, okay, but what does it really mean, right? And now they're more, I would say, less intrusive. So let's see. The glass cockpits received several fixes. So they fixed some edge cases with the VPOP was not correctly disarmed or deactivated after a change to the VNAV state. And they fixed various cases where the VNAV profile would sometimes display incorrect information near the end of the approach, depending on if the missed approach was activated, right? That was a very, I would say, a very specific scenario. In addition to that, they also fixed the bug where the autopilot flight director would not deactivate when the lock mode during the ILS lock approaches. After the activate nav sort was switched to FMS, right? Normally, if you switch the navigation source, the autopilot should, I would say, disconnect, right? It should switch off certain, I would say, functionalities, but that didn't happen. Also, they fixed the bug where certain intersections were not correctly displayed on the map or the GTC nearest intersection page, as well as they fixed the bug where removing the traffic and relative terrain indicators from the navigation map would leave behind an empty but visible container. That sometimes results, right, then it would look like a little bit weird on the map. Then you thought, hey, there was something there, but now it's gone. Yeah, you were correct. That's now being fixed. Also, they fixed the bug where the tools touchdown callouts were not using nearest runway elevation, right? That's really important. As well as they fixed a small inaccuracy in the lateral deviation scale above the PFD HSI map, right? There's the PFD HSI map where you can see, okay, hey, this is where I am. And there was also a small deviation in the scale, which was not 100% correct. Then they are calling out the autopilot and flight director, the heading mode fix, which we just discussed, right? So it now only reverses turn direction if the selected heading is turned past the 330 degrees away from the airplane's current heading. It refers to the generic hotfix which is in there. And they fixed the bug where sometimes reopening a GTC pop-up using the back button would cause elements below to not be correctly hidden or darkened, right? So you've got, I would say, in a GTC, you can click on that back button and then you could go back, I would say, to a previous page, but that didn't always hide, I would say, the page which you were on while navigating away from it. Last one, or almost last one, the VNAV profile wasn't displaying the top of descent when still in departure segment, even if the airplane has reached the cruise altitude and sequenced all climb constraints. And the last one is they reduced the delay of the tools touchdown callouts when using radio altitude. So several fixes for both the Garmin G3000 and G5000. Continuing with the G1000 NXI, they added support for third-party developers to provide global plugins for the NXI. This is cool. So let's see which third-party developers will develop something around it. And they extended the MFD rotary knob menu to allow customization customization by avionic plugins. So again, an extension for those, I would say, third-party developers. There were also 3 fixes. One of them was the same as what we see or what we just saw with the other cockpit. They fixed the bug where the intersections would not be displayed correctly. And also they fixed the lock mode, which would not be deactivated after you switch the nav source to FMS. Last one is to fix the B key not syncing the barometer to actual pressure, right? That's if you press the B from Bravo, then it will, I'd say, normally put the barometer correctly. So you don't have to, let's say, run or turn that knob. That's being fixed. The Garmin, both the GNS 430 and 530W, there were some navigation issues with the right knob. That's now being corrected, so it now closes correctly the dialogues. There's an added confirmation dialog for the active lag flight plan menu item, right? When you activate a flight plan, or when you've got a flight plan, I should say, and you want to activate a specific lag, right? You want to override the lag which is currently being displayed. It simply would do it, but normally it would ask for a confirmation. That's also being done. They had support for double direct to on existing waypoints to activate the lag, and they fixed several things, including the intersections one, which we just discussed, including, I would say, the autopilot, which was also here fixed, and some navigation issues, as well as they fixed the bug in time zone offset to always be treated as positive. The one which we did skip was the fix the bug where that could cause the list of the nearest page to become corrupted. I have never seen that one, but it could be that you have experienced it. So a lot of fixes. The KAP-140, they only fixed one thing. It's in the default KAP-4 or 140 template that caused the 100 knobs animation to be applied to both the 100 knobs and 1000 knobs. Well, that must have resulted in very weird things, but that's also being fixed. Now, continuing with the Boeings. And I would say this list is so long because they did several things, right? They did upgrades, they did bring new functionality, they did update the flight models, they made systems more comprehensive, which results in this crazy long list. There are 2 things which I could do. I would say, simply read all the items, but it simply is, I would say, almost impossible, and we're probably here for another hour if I would need to go to it. So, I would say, in summary, what they did is they fixed a lot of things, including, I would say, for example, really maybe between brackets, simple things like how things are looking on the displays, right? So using correct symbols, because they were not 100% correct. They fixed the VNAV, they fixed the ICAS, which is now supporting full engine indication displays. They changed the thrust management system, supporting the cost index, thrust limitation, and assumed temperature derate. But they also figured out that the fully featured autopilot now includes the auto land, the flare, and the rollout modes, right? So they extended the autopilot for both aircrafts. Also, the TCAS2 system supporting traffic advisories and RA indications of the ND, right? So the TCAS system prevents that you're making collision with another aircraft. And they revised the engine and the flight model, bring many values closer to the book, right? It's always, I would say, balance, right? Because they need to agree with the vendor of the aircraft, in this case Boeing, how, I would say, realistic this can be, according to what I heard from several stories. So other than that, they fixed the pressurization system, right, with FMS, auto and main landing altitude capabilities, and automatic VNAV-based altitude scheduling. They fixed the GPS and IRS navigation systems. Overhead panels were adjusted. Specifically for the 787, the revision of plane soundscape, the overall HUD supporting, the new fly-by-wire system simulating the authentic CU law with trim speed, and the flap systems comes with the load relief and auto gap functionality. If you ask me, this is an extensive list, but if you look at the individual beta releases, they fix so much more. And I would say it would have been nice if they would split this up in new functionality and fixed functionality, because they did a lot of work for the Boeing. So hopefully it will be, I would say, received very nicely. If you've got feedback, then of course be open and fair about it. To say, okay, hey, this doesn't look like 100% correct, so can you look into this? But always try to, let's say, provide nice feedback, right? Because the people from Asobo and Microsoft are working crazy hard on this. Then we've got the Cessna Citation CT4 and WT21. They fixed an issue with the wind indicator would spin at the wrong direction in the PFD, and 2 FMS fixes. One was an edge case where inserting the waypoint at the end of the flight plan when you try to insert the waypoint. And the second one was a default hold inbound course to match the previous leg outbound course. Last one was the fix for the autopilot and flight director, which would not deactivate the lock mode, right? That's the same thing as we saw with the other, say, items already. Then the Cessna Citation Longitude also received several, I would say, improvements. The PFD roll indicator is now rendered using the correct sky pointer configuration. They fixed the thrust reverser animations, right? That didn't almost look correctly, although I'm not always looking at those thrust reversers, right? They added a mitigation to prevent the engine and the APU graphics of the few hydraulics, ECS, and anti-ice synoptics pages from rendering incorrectly, right? That's those pages where you can look at, okay, hey, what's the status of the fuel, or what are the hydraulics status, right? That sometimes wasn't displayed correctly, as well as the rudder can now be powered by both the A and B hydraulic systems and no longer requires the left engine to be running. That initially didn't work, now it's being fixed. Bearing pointer information is no longer missing when the PFD is in split mode, as well as they fixed the improper placement of the nav DME information banner when the PFD was in split mode, right? You can set it in split mode, and the screen will, well, as the name already says, be split it in 2 pieces. In that case, the nav DME information was not correctly being displayed, as well as they fixed a bug where the bearing pointer 2 information was displayed in the incorrect location when bearing pointer 1 was turned off. Next one, they changed the selective airspeed while auto throttle is on, no longer cause the auto throttle commands changes in the throttle lever position, right? That's what they expected. And they added support for the dual Q flight directive format. So dual Q, I think that means that you put on both of them, but that's a guess. Roll spoilers mid and outboard can no longer be extended without hydraulic system pressure. That could be done, which was not realistic, and they improved the auto throttle's airspeed tracking behavior and improved the responsiveness of the auto throttle when envelope speed protection is active. Last 2, they reduced the sensitivity of the auto throttle to suddenly change the airspeed, and the PFD roll indicator no longer renders the roll scale arc. So also a lot of fixes again for the Cessna Citation Longitude. The TBM 930 minimum alerter now works correctly when using radio minimums. That's being fixed, so not too many fixes for that aircraft. Then if we look to the peripherals, there's the Yeoman Arrow, new joystick. They implemented some new presets, general aviation, jets and helicopters. So if you have the joystick, you can easily switch between those presets to make sure that you're using the say joystick in the most useful way. Then for the various peripheral fixes, for all the devices with a joystick can now control the cursor, as well as they fixed the right analog stick in the gamepad. If you're using the gamepad, default preset not spinning any knobs in the aircraft. So also good. What's the other fix? Well, one of them is for the SDK, right? Not say normally we don't discuss it, but just one fix. They fixed the crash when requesting some airplane specific SIM-VARs on helicopters. And the aircraft editor, they removed the maxed engine count. So it looks like that they are removing it completely. So now you can build an aircraft with 10 engines, question mark. So this is the full list. It's an extremely long list. Well, how to get it? Well, first make sure that you go to the store. If you go to the store, make sure you install the available updates. Then start Flight Simulator and it should prompt you to install all the updates. Make sure that you also look at your marketplace, or at at the things you bought, right? Inside your profile, you can go to the content manager and make sure that you install all the updates which are available there to also ensure that you've got the latest and the greatest. Here ends this video where we had a brief look at the release notes of the Aircraft and Avionics update number 2, which has been released earlier today. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.